Her name was Isabella Marlowe, a 36-year-old graphic designer from Brighton, England. On the surface, Isabella's life was ordinary, even enviable. A cozy apartment with tall bay windows overlooking the sea, a circle of close friends who gathered every Sunday for tea, and a freelance career that allowed her to work with clients from all over the world. But inside, she carried questions she rarely voiced. What happens when we die? Why do so many people speak of signs, visions, and warnings about the end times? And, if God truly exists, how much time do we have left? Her faith was something she wore quietly, like a small cross pendant beneath her blouse. She had grown up in church, but adulthood had pushed her into a restless spiritual state, believing yet unsure, longing for answers without knowing where to find them. Little did she know, within weeks, she would face death itself, and return with a message that would shake her to her very core, and ours. What about you? Have you ever wondered what your very last moment on Earth would feel like? Write in the comments, if you had 72 hours left, how would you spend them? Isabella's life moved in a rhythm she thought would go on forever. She would wake to the gentle hum of the seagulls outside her window, make herself a cup of strong Earl Grey, and check her emails while sunlight painted golden streaks across her desk. Her cat, Oliver, a lazy ginger with an air of royalty, would curl at her feet as she worked on logo designs and digital illustrations. Although her work was creative, she often felt like she was living in a loop, repeating days with only small variations: dinner with friends on Fridays, calls to her mother on Sundays, long walks along Brighton Pier when the weather allowed. Her friends saw her as grounded and optimistic, but Isabella knew there was a quiet ache inside her, a sense that something enormous was approaching, though she couldn't name it. She had begun reading about global events, strange prophetic dreams people were posting online, and stories of 3 days of darkness that made her uneasy. At night, lying in bed, she would sometimes pray without words, just a feeling, a reaching toward God, almost as if she were whispering, "Please, tell me the truth before it's too late." She didn't realize those prayers were being heard, and that the answer would come in a way more terrifying and beautiful than she could have ever imagined. Her last normal morning started with sunshine and coffee, but it would end in darkness, shattered glass, and silence. Pause for a moment. Have you ever felt, deep down, that something world-changing was coming? Write in the comments what signs you think we should be paying attention to. It was a Thursday, one of those rare autumn days when the sea looked calm, almost glassy, and the air carried the faint scent of salt and distant rain. Isabella had a client meeting scheduled in London. She decided to drive rather than take the train. She wanted the freedom to stop along the way, maybe photograph the changing leaves, maybe just breathe outside the routine. The motorway was busier than usual, but the weather was perfect for driving. Cool, clear, with the sun breaking through layers of thin cloud. She had music playing softly, the kind that makes you nostalgic for reasons you can't quite explain. Halfway through her journey, she noticed the sky shift. The clouds began to gather faster, almost unnaturally, darkening the horizon. A strange stillness fell over the road, and the temperature inside her car seemed to drop. She felt a shiver crawl up her spine, but brushed it off as a cold draft from the AC. Moments later, the sound came, like metal grinding far away, mixed with the faintest hum of electricity. She glanced in her rearview mirror just as a lorry in the next lane swerved violently, its tires screaming against the asphalt. She had no time to react. The impact was sudden and merciless. A deafening crash. Glass exploded around her like a storm of tiny glittering shards. The seatbelt cut hard into her shoulder. Her chest slammed against the restraint, the air in her lungs vanishing in an instant. Everything went muffled, like the world had been thrown underwater. She could see her hands still gripping the steering wheel, but she couldn't feel them. The taste of iron filled her mouth. Her vision blurred, the edges turning black. Somewhere in the distance, she heard someone calling her name, but it didn't sound like any voice she knew. And then, silence. The kind of silence that isn't just the absence of sound, but the absence of everything. If this were you, if in one instant your life flipped into darkness, what would be the last thought you'd have? Write it in the comments, I want to know. The darkness was not instant. It was a slow swallowing, like ink bleeding into water. Isabella felt herself suspended in a strange in-between, where time had no meaning. At first there was weight, an unbearable heaviness pressing down on her chest, as though the air itself had turned solid. She tried to inhale, but her lungs wouldn't obey. Panic flared for a second, then faded, replaced by a calm so unnatural it frightened her. The pain from the crash, the shattered glass, the seatbelt's brutal grip, it all melted away. she became aware of something else. She was no longer inside her body. She could see the scene below as if she were floating several feet above it. The crumpled car, the twisted metal, the flash of emergency lights in the distance. Her own body, still, pale, fragile, pinned by the wreckage. She felt no attachment to it, only curiosity, as though she were looking at a shell someone had left behind. Then came the sound, a single, deep note, resonating from nowhere and everywhere at once. It wasn't just heard, it was felt, vibrating through her being. With it came a pull, gentle yet irresistible, drawing her upward through a tunnel of soft, golden light. The fear was gone. Her thoughts became clear, sharper than they had ever been in life. And deep inside, she knew she was dying. There was no bargaining, no desperate plea to go back, only surrender. The light was so warm, so alive, that part of her wished never to return. But just as she began to drift fully into it, a presence approached. Not from ahead, not from behind, but from within the light itself. She didn't see a face yet, but she knew. She knew who was coming. If you could ask just one question before leaving this world, what would it be? Write it below. I'll be reading your answers. The golden glow around Isabella grew brighter, but it did not blind. It embraced. It felt like walking into the memory of the safest place she had ever known, except this was infinitely more real than anything she had touched on Earth. She floated, not in space, not in air, but in something alive. Every particle of light seemed aware of her, pulsing in gentle waves as if greeting her arrival. The warmth sank deeper than her skin. It reached the marrow of her soul. And then, she saw him. At first, it was only a silhouette within the brilliance, a figure that radiated such purity that her very being trembled. His robe seemed woven from the light itself. As he stepped closer, she could see his eyes, depths so infinite they seemed to hold every sunrise, every tear, every heartbeat in existence. It was Jesus. There was no doubt, no question. The recognition wasn't learned. It was as if her soul had always known him. The moment his gaze met hers, all the weight she had ever carried, every regret, every shame, every unanswered question, melted away. She felt known, fully and utterly, in a way no human relationship could ever reach. He spoke, but not with sound. His words entered directly into her spirit. Isabella, the time is almost over. The phrase echoed within her, shaking her more than the crash ever had. She wanted to ask what he meant, but before she could form the thought, he extended his hand. When she touched it, a torrent of visions poured into her, scenes of a world trembling on the edge of something catastrophic. She saw skies turning black, not from storm clouds, but from a darkness that swallowed the sun itself. People huddled in their homes, terrified. A silence heavier than death hung over cities. And then 3 long, unbroken nights where no light, no candle, no flame could pierce the void. What do you think these 3 days of darkness would mean for our world? Share your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your interpretation. When Isabella's hand rested in his, she felt her soul open like a book he had always known how to read. The light around them began to shift, no longer the gentle gold of peace, but a brilliant white mixed with flashes of crimson, as if heaven itself was thundering in urgency. Jesus' voice filled her, not through her ears, but directly into the core of who she was. The time you live in now is the final hour before the storm. Tell them, tell everyone, there are events coming that will shake the earth, and most are not prepared. The darkness is closer than they believe. As he spoke, visions unfolded before her eyes. She saw the moon glowing red, hanging low in the sky. She saw waves rising like walls, swallowing entire coastlines. The ground split open in cities she recognized: London, New York, Manila. People running, screaming, but no sound came from their mouths. It was as if the entire world was being muted. Then, the vision narrowed to a single image, an unearthly blackness rolling across the sky, blotting out the sun. It didn't look like night. It looked like the complete absence of light, a void so thick it seemed alive. When the 3 days come, Jesus continued, do not open your doors. Do not look outside. Do not listen to the voices that will call to you. They are not what they seem. Her heart pounded, not with fear of him, but with the sheer weight of what she was hearing. I am telling you this so that my people will not be taken by surprise. Store what you need, stay in prayer, and remember, those who belong to me will be protected, but they must not let fear take hold. The vision expanded again, and she saw candles burning inside small homes, families praying together in whispered unity, while the world outside twisted in chaos. She saw shapes moving in the darkness, shadows that weren't human, and heard a sound like distant weeping, even though she knew it was not coming from people. Finally, he looked directly into her eyes and said, 72 hours. That is all the warning they will have when it begins. The moment he said it, the number burned into her mind, glowing like fire in her spirit. She wanted to plead with him for more time, for the chance to save everyone. But deep down, she already understood. This was not about stopping what was coming. This was about preparing hearts for it. If you only had 72 hours before the world was plunged into darkness, what would you do? Write your answer below. I want to read your plan. The visions began to move faster, like pages of history being flipped in reverse before accelerating into the future. Isabella was no longer just watching. She was inside them. She found herself standing in the middle of a city she recognized. London. The air was heavy, thick with a strange pressure that seemed to make every breath a little harder. The sky had an odd tint, neither day nor night, but a dim metallic glow, like sunlight filtered through ash. On the first day, chaos erupted without warning. Television screens, phones, and radios all went dark at the exact same moment. People filled the streets, shouting into dead devices, looking to the skies for answers. There was no news broadcast, no government statement, just silence. The second scene struck harder. Isabella was standing inside a home with a small family. 2 parents, 3 children, gathered in fear. They had pulled heavy curtains across the windows, sealing every crack with blankets and tape. Outside, the air wasn't just dark. It was alive, swirling with a blackness that pressed against the glass like something trying to get in. Then came the sounds. Knocking at the door, scratching on the walls, voices calling the family members by name, perfect imitations of loved ones who were not there. The mother covered her children's ears, whispering prayers through trembling lips. On the second day, food began to run out. Water, too. The darkness had weight. It felt like being deep underwater, pressing against the skin, making people's thoughts turn heavy. Some broke under the pressure, tearing down their barricades to step outside. Isabella saw what happened when they did. Their bodies were still there, but their eyes, empty, vacant, gone. The third day felt eternal. Isabella saw candlelight flickering in hundreds of homes, small flames fighting against the void. Families clung together, some singing softly, others weeping. Outside, there was movement, shadows taller than buildings, shapes that slid along the streets without sound. And then, the darkness broke. A single blinding ray of light split the horizon. It wasn't the sun. It was something purer, sharper. The darkness recoiled from it like smoke before wind. Birds began to sing again, but the world that emerged was not the same. Cities lay in ruins. The seas had risen in some places, receded in others. Many were gone, and those who remained were forever changed. Isabella turned toward Jesus, still holding her in this vision. His expression was both sorrowful and resolute. Few will believe until it begins, but tell them anyway. Her heart burned with the weight of his words. She knew that once she returned, her life could never go back to normal, not when she had seen the countdown. Do you believe these visions could really happen in our lifetime? Type yes or no in the comments, and tell me why. The vision dissolved into light again, but this time the warmth began to fade. Isabella felt the grip of gravity return, pulling at her spirit. She looked at Jesus, wanting to cling to him, desperate to stay in that place where every tear was understood and every fear was gone. He reached out, touching her forehead gently. It is not your time. You must return. There are words only you can speak, and ears that will only listen to you. The light surged around her one last time, and then, like a sudden plunge into icy water, she was falling. The peaceful silence shattered. Sound hit her first. Distant sirens, the crackle of radios, hurried footsteps on asphalt. Then came the pain, sharp, merciless, flooding her body with 100 points of agony. Her lungs seized, dragging in air that felt like fire. She opened her eyes to chaos. A paramedic's face hovered above her, his voice urgent, calling for a stretcher. The smell of gasoline, hot metal, and blood filled her senses. She tried to speak, but only a broken gasp escaped her lips. As they pulled her from the wreckage, the memories of the light and the warning pounded in her mind. She could still hear his voice. 72 hours, echoing over and over. She knew she couldn't tell the medics right then. They would think the crash had scrambled her mind, but she also knew she couldn't stay silent forever. This was no dream, no hallucination. The world was running out of time. and she had been sent back to sound the alarm. Even through the haze of morphine at the hospital, she kept replaying every word, every image, memorizing the details so she could share them exactly as she had seen. If you had a near-death experience and came back with a warning from heaven, who would you tell first? Write their name in the comments. Recovery was slow and painful. Isabella spent weeks in the hospital, her body stitched, bandaged, and braced in places she didn't even know could break. But the real injury was invisible. She was no longer the woman who had gotten into her car that morning. Friends visited with flowers and light conversation, trying to cheer her. Family called daily, relieved she was alive. But Isabella could feel the unspoken question in their eyes. What happened to you in those lost minutes? At first, she told no one. The visions were too vivid, too sacred. And yet, the more she kept them inside, the heavier they became. It was as if the words of Jesus were pressing against her chest, demanding to be released. One night, unable to sleep, she sat by her window, looking out over Brighton's coastline. The streetlights glowed like small sentinels in the darkness. She imagined what it would be like when those lights went out forever, when the sky itself turned black. The thought made her shiver. She began writing everything she remembered, every image, every sound, every warning, into a worn leather journal. The pages filled quickly. She sketched the towering shadows she had seen during the 3 days of darkness, the sealed windows, the candle-lit prayers. She wrote down the exact words he had spoken, making sure nothing was lost. But when she finally shared her experience online, the reactions were divided. Some called her a prophet. Others accused her of spreading fear. A few mocked her entirely. It hurt, but it didn't surprise her. Jesus had told her that few would believe until it began. Still, she pressed forward, speaking in small church groups, recording late-night videos, emailing her testimony to anyone who would listen. Her art changed too. The bright, whimsical illustrations she once created were replaced by haunting images of light-piercing darkness, of hands reaching upward through shadow. Her clients noticed, and some quietly stopped hiring her. But she couldn't go back to drawing pretty distractions, not when she had seen what was coming. Some days, she felt the weight of it all might crush her. And yet, there was also a strange, unshakable hope. She had stood in the light. She had seen the one who holds the end and the beginning in his hands. No matter how dark the prophecy, she knew the ending was victory. If someone you knew shared a vision like this with you, would you believe them? Be honest. Write yes or no in the comments and tell me why. Isabella's story is no longer just hers. It's a message planted in her heart for anyone willing to listen. She knows the danger of being ignored. She knows the ridicule that comes when you speak of warnings no one wants to hear. But she also knows this. The countdown has already begun. The visions didn't fade with time. If anything, they became clearer. Each world event, each strange shift in weather, each whisper of political tension felt like another domino tipping toward the moment Jesus had shown her. She no longer asked if it would happen, only when. And so she speaks to you now, not as a preacher, not as a prophet, but as someone who stood in the light and was sent back for a reason. When the 3 days of darkness begin, there will be no time to prepare. Your preparation must start now, spiritually, mentally, and practically. Guard your faith, strengthen your home, and remember, fear is the door the darkness will try to enter through. Do not open it. This is not a call to panic. It is a call to readiness. It is a reminder that life is fragile, and eternity is closer than we think. If you've made it this far into Isabella's journey, it's because you were meant to hear it. Whether you believe every detail or doubt it entirely, one question remains. If the sky went black tomorrow, would you be ready? She has done her part, returning from the edge of eternity to pass this on. Now the choice is yours. Tell me in the comments, what's the very first step you'll take to prepare? I want to hear it. And if you believe this warning matters, don't let it stop here. Share it. Speak it. Let the words spread farther than fear. Subscribe now, not for entertainment, but to stay connected to messages that could mean the difference between confusion and clarity when the hours run out. If you've listened to every word of Isabella's journey, you now carry something precious, something that cost her more than she can ever explain. She died. She met Jesus. She was sent back for this moment, for you. But a message like this cannot stay trapped in one corner of the internet. If her story stirred even a spark in your heart, then you have a role to play in making sure others hear it before it's too late. Right now, you can help in 3 simple ways. 1. Comment below. Write your thoughts, your questions, or even your prayer for what's coming. Your words could encourage someone else who's reading. 2. Like this video, not just for numbers, but because every like pushes this warning into more people's feeds who might never see it otherwise. 3. Subscribe and turn on notifications. This is not the last message. There are more testimonies, more visions, more urgent calls you need to hear before the time runs out. 4. Share it now. Send it to your family, your friends, your prayer group, your coworkers. Post it on social media. Let the warning travel farther than the darkness ever will. 5. Support the mission. If this message blessed you and you want to help keep it reaching others, you can use the Super Thanks button. Every single gift helps spread these testimonies across the globe. Don't scroll away and forget. The clock is ticking, and we may be closer to those 72 hours than we think. Before you go, answer this in the comments. If the sky went black tonight, what would you do in your very first hour?